but I had a question about the Garrett Crochet 85 pitch outing. Who decided that
Sure.
85 pitches was the out and why? And lastly, why didn't that get conveyed to Garrett Crochet before the start so that he could have understood, maybe pitched a little bit differently, knowing he only had 85 pitches that day?
Yeah, so I would say that's an organizational decision, and I'm happy to take that one on. And we collect a lot of information about about our players, especially our pitchers in between starts. Some of that is objective, some of it is subjective, and we're trying, like all decisions, we're trying to balance the short-term and long-term interests of the team. And we felt like it made sense based on some of the workload that he had amassed going into that start to keep him a little bit shorter. I don't know that there's a magic number. Somewhere between 80 and 90 is kind of where we landed. And then, I think kind of in respecting the competitive nature of Garrett and the game, I've seen it go both ways, where it could be helpful to say, hey, we're going to keep you a little bit short. I've also seen that backfire, and we decided it was best to have Garrett prepare as usual, and approach the game in the way that he had his previous starts, given how successful they've been. And if Garrett is frustrated because he was taken by surprise, we understand that. We're also able to talk through it, and I think it ultimately he both understood and agreed that if this situation arose again, that understanding what his pitch count was going to be was not something that he was looking for.
But so that's not Cora's decision then. So that's the organization has analytics they present to him and say, hey, this is why we should be at this point tonight.
It's a conversation, yeah. And as it relates to health, I think it makes sense to leverage all of the resources and expertise in the organization. And Alice and I have conversations around game strategy every single day. And, when we see things differently, we sit down and have productive conversations about it and ultimately make a decision.
But it's not just a conversation. If you say to him, this is why we have to be at 85 pitches, then he gets out after 85 pitches, right? I mean, it's not like he said, how many pitches should we have for him tonight? You present information to the manager saying, this is why we should pull him at 85 pitches tonight.
Right. So, we would sit down and say, hey, this is kind of what the workload has looked like heading into this. This is what, some of the information that we have says. We're going to need to try to monitor the workload. Is it tonight? Is it next time? Let's grab the medical group, and we reach a decision together.
Craig, how do you balance, or especially in the close games that you lost, and you guys lost a lot of them, balancing going with your gut and just your baseball experience versus the analytics, and maybe saying, all right, well, we can't bring Chapman in for one more inning, or maybe so we have to go with another direction. Like, how do you balance that? Because I feel like in baseball, maybe times when it's close games, you guys should use your gut more than the analytics.
Yeah, I think any answer to that is going to be imperfect. You try to synthesize all of that information in real time, and often you don't have all of the information. What we try to do is just kind of talk about like the decision-making framework, right? Hey, we knew that the best matchup we think is kind of predicted by some projection model is this. Here's why it didn't make sense to do that, whether it was, a reliever is tired, or we felt like there was an opposing strategy that might conflict with that, or the starter that we had in the game, is throwing really well, and that's not captured. So it's not about, never defying what the analytics says. I think it's just about being consistent in how you make a decision. And if we're going to rely on our gut regularly, then we should be tracking those decisions and making sure that we're getting them right more than the alternatives. And if we're going to follow the analytics all of the time, then we also need to be tracking that and making sure that we're getting it right, more often than not. And I think where we get in trouble is when you think that you might know something that a model doesn't and you don't, or you assume that a model does know something that it doesn't. And so I think understanding what the inputs are and understanding what the blind spots are is how you make the best decisions.
What did the analytics say about how many times a team can be walked off in a single season?
This is, this stretch that we are in is highly improbable. Unfortunately, it doesn't really matter, right? Like, and baseball is a game that we do this all the time. We look at our underlying metrics and we try to find the silver lining, and we say, based on our run differential, our expected record is we should be 2 or 3 games over 500. The reality is we don't get to go back and win the games that we've lost, though. So, we have to put ourselves in a position by doing all of those things that we talked about all call every chance we have.
I guess with the analytics stuff, I just asked this, and I'm not asking this to be a dink. What is the role of Alex Cora? Why is he paid $7 million a year if he's just presented with information and enacts that as the on-field manager during the game?
So I would say that that's not exclusively the role. I think that was, probably distilled down too simply. I think it's to synthesize in real time the information that he's seeing along with the objective information and all of the preparation. And I also think, one of, if not the most difficult job that a manager has, and Alex could certainly speak to this better than I can, is managing the personalities and the needs of 26 guys in a clubhouse and a staff of 10 to 15 coaches. But this isn't about telling Alex to, stick to a script without deviating at all. This is about having productive conversations to put the team in the best position to win as often as we possibly can.
All right. Well, hang in there.
Yep. Toes on the grass.
Yeah.
Late in games. Especially for the third
if
baseman.
You see that tomorrow night, know that it was this call that
maybe throw an extra inning bunt on the road out there every once in a while, maybe, despite the analytics.
Yeah, no, that's when I talk about maybe doing some things a little bit differently than we normally would, while the offense isn't scoring runs the way that we'd like. I think all of those types of creative solutions need to be options for us.
They're on the table. Yeah. All right, Craig, thank
Absolutely.
you.